Hello everyone. It's pretty refreshing to be past all the time skip stuff. As always, I'll address a couple concerns raised from the previous episode. Sakura is not superpowered by any means, and this rewrite was designed to prop up all of the Konoha 12. What I mean by that is Sakura got some very big, quote-unquote, main character energy here, and that was on purpose, because the Konoha 12 are great, but I've always intended on Sakura, Sasuke, and Naruto remaining the main characters. And where it's easy to include Naruto and Sasuke on the plot, given their extensive lore, Sakura needed to have some sort of obvious inclusion. Also, there was a concern about Sakura not working for her power and also not seemingly overly powerful, judging by her battle against Sakon. Well, villains are stronger in my rewrite, and Sakura is also much stronger, but if it wasn't obvious already, I don't want her to be a flat, boring powerhouse. Her arc will be slightly different than your bog standard shonen character, as will all of the Konoha 12's arcs. With that out of the way, we've got a lot to cover if I intend on keeping these episodes under an hour, because 45 minutes is apparently impossible to hit. The culmination of all their experiences are in this next series of episodes, which all take place following the 6-day lead-up. Just a quick heads up, this episode is actually a little bit shorter than normal, but it'll make sense in the episodes to come. On with the show. Day 7. In the week leading to today, Shino, Kiba, and Neji had assigned themselves to tracking various members of the Sinister Six for any conspicuous activity. Perhaps one of the most confounding actions they heard about was Sakura reviving Jiraiya where Lady Tsunade could not. Not only was the feat itself miraculous, but her reviving one of Lord Hokage's staunchest allies seemed backwards to them. Shikamaru, after failing to track as successfully, chose to follow the Hokage around like a lost puppy. Konohamaru, Moegi, and Udon were left directionless, as he had forsaken his mentor duties to keep an eye on the Hokage as much as possible. Shikamaru had no reason to hide, though, and found himself annoying Lord Fourth more than anything due to his constant pestering. Choji, meanwhile, had gone to his father and asked about any changes about the Hokage in the last few years while Choji was away. "Son," Choza had said softly, "he lost nearly our full military might in the same fell swoop that robbed him of his son. It's impressive that his hair hasn't turned gray from the stress. We can hardly judge him for some harsh decisions that followed." Leaning against the railing atop the Hokage building, Shikamaru glanced up at the sky as the fluffy, peaceful clouds drifted into one another, darkening and forming slowly into a dark mass above Konoha. Sighing, Shikamaru furrowed his brow in thought. If Ino goes rogue with the rest of that group, it could divide the village. We've always been united, but if trust erodes past that point of betrayal, I can't imagine how things might spiral. There are too many alliances, too many families, too many friendships at stake. While Shikamaru looked at the darkening sky, Choji looked down at the village below, his expression turned serious. "I know how strong I've become, but Naruto? Ino? How can we stand against that? If they decide to actually fight the Hokage, you're right. It would tear apart the fabric of the community, of the village. What would that mean for us? For all the generations to come?" "Yeah," Shikamaru replied, his voice low. "If they don't believe in the village's leadership anymore, beyond the Hokage himself, it will set a new precedent. Others might follow suit, just like the Uchiha clan's own division. If that happens, it could lead to chaos, Choji. A war. We might not have a village anymore." Choji swallowed hard. His appetite had slowly been gaining since returning to the village, but now he felt repulsed by the idea of eating. I just want everyone to be safe. I never wanted to be a part of something so complicated. I thought we were all in this together. We're all wearing the same leaf headband. We all have the will of fire. Why must they try so hard to disprove that? Straightening, Shikamaru's gaze steadied out over the rooftops. We are in this together, Choji. If it comes down to it, we will be ready to stand up, even against our friends. It's our duty to protect the village, no matter the cost. A moment of silence settled between them as they both stared across the village, lost in their thoughts. Choji felt a surge of sorrow that his reunion with the village wasn't followed by celebration with everyone else. You really think we'll have to fight? Maybe, Shikamaru said, contemplating the weight of Choji's words. But for now, we must stay vigilant regardless. We know they're planning something, and I'd just like to know what that is specifically before it's too late. They exchanged heavy glances as the clouds intensified overhead. With a shared sense of determination, Shikamaru lifted a closed fist to his childhood friend, who bumped it back. In these same moments, Kiba, Shino, and Neji stood near the village's gates, watching people come and go. They mostly stood in silence, but with Kiba in the group, their silence never lasted long. Though Kiba claimed to have grown shy around people, it was certainly difficult to keep him shut up. Pacing restlessly, Kiba repeatedly combed his hands through his hair as his instincts buzzed with unease. I don't like this at all, he growled. They've been acting stranger and stranger as the weeks progressed. Naruto and Ino especially. We can't have our Jinchuriki being part of a splinter cell. Adjusting his glasses, Shino remained calm and measured as he watched Kiba pace. We need to wait for them to act first, Kiba. They've all been acting unusual, and we've all seen it. They've even been training exclusively with one another, and the way they've been training feels more like a preparation for a confrontation rather than friendly sparring. Neji leaned against a tree, arms crossed. I've seen the anxiety and frustration in their chakra signals. They're erratic, almost like they've been suppressing their true feelings for a very long time. And it's affecting all of them. Whatever they're precisely planning, they've certainly got a united front, so we need to make sure ours is too. Pacing stopping, Kiba wheeled on Neji. A united front against the Hokage? That's still an insane thought. There's no way they're... Gah! I've been back and forth on this 1,000 times! They might not be trying to kill him, Neji muttered on his emphasis to evade eavesdroppers. But if they are indeed plotting something violent, we must be the first wall of defense. It is our duty, our responsibility, to protect the village and the Hokage, even from our own classmates. Just then, Shino's expression shifted, his attention focused elsewhere. Wait, I sense something unusual. Kiba perked up, his senses heightening. What is it? Movement, Shino stated, his voice steady but urgent. From their direction, it's aggressive. Naruto, Sakura, Sasuke, Hinata, and Rock Lee. They're not even trying to hide their intent. Neji's eye narrowed as he activated his Byakugan. I see them too. They're almost beyond my range. Their chakra is fluctuating and it feels hostile. Kiba clenched his fists, adrenaline surging through him. The hunt's on, Akamaru! Held from charging right away, Kiba's now fierce eyes shoot to Neji's hand on him. No going wild. You're with me. I'll alert Tenten, see if she's made up her mind, Shino advised. I won't be far behind. Approach with caution. We cannot underestimate them. The air around them seemed to swirl with anticipation. The citizens entering and exiting at the gates seemed none the wiser to the plotting about to unfurl within their own village. Glancing up from his watch, Choza saw nothing but an empty street, sure that there were some people there just a moment ago. Standing within Lord Orochimaru's now defunct lab, Naruto's impatience simmers just beneath the surface. Turning to Lee, his eyes ablaze with determination, Naruto declared, "The time to act is now. I've never sensed such little presence around the Hokage building. This is our perfect opportunity." Lee nodded, his calm demeanor steadying Naruto's impatience. "I understand, Naruto, but we must make sure everyone is ready. If we are going to do this, we need to do it together." "Right," Naruto agreed, his resolve hardening. "You go find Sasuke and Hinata, I'll gather Sakura and Ino. We need to move quickly and strike before the Hokage can even blink." Without waiting for a response, Naruto took off, flashing from the lab to the outer edge of the village where he had planted one of his special kunai for just this occasion. The familiar streets of Konoha blurred around him as he raced towards Sakura's home. His heart raced with anticipation, but a nagging sense of urgency pulsed in the back of his mind. He had been planning this for weeks, and in the last week everything was falling into place perfectly. Now was the moment to put everything into action. He had been using his sensory ability so prolifically that it activated instinctively to help him locate Sakura. When he reached Sakura's house, he skipped any pleasantries of knocking on the door, choosing to instead launch through her bedroom window. "Naruto!" Sakura shouted at him from a chair she sat at while reading. "What if I was getting dressed, you idiot?" "Sakura," Naruto said, his voice far steadier than he thought it would be. "It's time." Eyes instantly hardening, Sakura nodded, standing and grabbing her ninja tools. "I'll get Ino. Lee's getting Sasuke and Hinata," Naruto explained before vanishing out her window almost as quickly as he had arrived. However, this time when he reached out with his sensory ability, he did not detect Ino. Her chakra signature in particular was obviously just as unique as his own, and he could sense her from anywhere in the village. But at the moment, there was literal silence answering back. Gritting his teeth that he was wasting time looking for her, he resolved that wherever she was now, she would doubtlessly notice their attack taking place. Charging towards their rendezvous point, Naruto couldn't shake the feeling that something was off with Ino's absence. It both infuriated him, but also worried him. She was an extremely powerful ally in these circumstances, but as powerful as she was, who could erase her chakra signature entirely? Shaking his head loose from the distraction, Naruto resolved that he would solve that problem after this assault. Seeing the others on a rooftop nearby at their agreed-upon destination, Naruto only signaled for them to move out before himself flashing ahead. Appearing at his now favorite spot atop the Kage heads, Naruto looked down in anticipation for the first sign of the Hokage. Whatever the Hokage had been doing in these moments of being undetectable, Naruto had no idea, but where he stood gave him the greatest flexibility of sensing the Hokage and acting. "Shino?" Tenten asked, opening the door to her home. "Tenten, the moment has come, and we ask for you to help us protect the village," Shino said quickly, nodding for her to follow him. Staying still in her doorway, Tenten shook her head at him. I just don't know, Shino." "It is what it is. You know where to find us," Shino told her, backing away. "I no longer have any time to convince you." As Shino dashed towards the Hokage building, Tenten stepped out into her yard and watched him go. Biting a nail, Tenten's worry turned to annoyance as she dashed back into her home. If not one of them was going to do the right thing, then she would. Grabbing her gear, just in case, including the Hiramakere, Tenten sprinted out her front door as the village tilted on the precipice of a needless conflict. Ino squirmed in darkness, tied with ropes and seals drawn around her neck and down her restricted arms and legs as she stared up at her jailer. On one side of the room she could see vertical slits of natural light, perhaps a window to the outside, but not enough to indicate where she was. The Hokage had knocked her out soon after arresting her, and now she had no clue where he had put her. When she reached inward for comment from Isobu, all she heard back was unintelligible whispers. Whatever seals had been placed on her were doing well to keep the Three Tails locked from her. She knew this wasn't the jails at least, because certainly her father would have intervened and made sure she was at least treated well, which meant he was completely unaware of what was happening to her in these moments. Rolling around, Ino tried desperately to at least sit up, but just the way her bindings were tied, she couldn't properly right herself. "Sit still," her jailer told her, crouching beside her and reaching forward with a hand to grab her by the leg. "Or I'll break this." Grabbing his cane, he released her and straightened. He had clearly not moved for some time, as she heard all his joints pop every time he made any minor movement. Danzo Shimura walked into the one sliver of light in the room. "Seems my dream came true after all, and only at the cost of 3 years. Finally, the reign of the Senju doctrine has reached an end. We find ourselves at the first steps to a glorious new village that values strength and loyalty over boundless, irrational trust. We will rebuild the Anbu Corps and reinstate a police force that can actually do their jobs. Perhaps the Hyuga. The tailed beasts will be weapons and nothing more, sweet girl. Keep them locked away until we're set upon by a ceaseless foe. I still have a few good years to turn this village around." Sipping some tea in his home, Minato contemplated how the day would go. Naruto was somewhere, and even if he no longer trusted his own father, he wasn't about to leave the village either. Meanwhile, Minato pondered, the others of Naruto's class that had returned were holding on to further secrets as well. He wondered if any of them had damning information, and if they did, what they intended to do with it. At the end of the day, he might have to systematically arrest them all, just as he did with Rock Lee, and see what information he could pull from them all. But also perhaps Naruto would be the annoying freedom fighter for them all. He was certainly a trouble these days, but Minato figured that should the village be attacked, Naruto would doubtlessly protect it. For that reason, and for that reason alone, he allowed Naruto to do some of his hijinks, even at the occasional detriment of Minato. Sighing, he decided to check in with Shikaku for an important little chat before heading off to... Interrupted in the middle of his thoughts, Minato looked towards the front of his home as someone's knocking at the door emanated through the house. Standing, Minato fixed his eyes on the door for a while, wondering who it could be. After another 10 seconds, the knocking came again. Shrugging, Minato went to the door and opened it. "Oh, it's you." Charging the front doors of the Hokage building, Sasuke followed Hinata's guiding Byakugan and Naruto's promise that they would meet no resistance as they made their way through the compound. Sure enough, as they zipped through the halls, there wasn't a soul in sight. Not that Sasuke or Hinata ever visited the Hokage building, but they would have expected a secretary or some council people going about their village duties. But it was akin to an abandoned building, and that in itself unsettled them. They beelined first for the Hokage's quarters, but there was no one there. After this, they did a systematic search of the building, every level and every room, until they found any kind of evidence of the Hokage's whereabouts, or at least an explanation for where everyone was. A floor above the entrance, Hinata pointed out that she could see someone in a nearby room, but that they were lying down and their chakra wasn't reading correctly, as if they had a seal placed upon them. Smashing through the door without reserve, Sasuke opened the room to the hall's light, and Hinata pointed him to the far corner where they could see the faint outline of someone. "Keep your eyes open for interruptions," Sasuke told Hinata as he dashed towards the body on the ground. As he came closer, it became immediately obvious that it was Ino, and as Sasuke knelt to reassure her, Hinata raised the alarm. "Sasuke, the window!" Keeping his guard up, Sasuke swiveled to see Kiba and Neji breaking through the previously barricaded window. "Lady Hinata!" Neji shouted with frustration, but his head had swiveled to Sasuke. "Get your hands off Ino!" Kiba roared, launching himself at Sasuke. Pulling a quick kunai, Sasuke blocked Kiba's own, and as they separated from their first clash, Sasuke grabbed hold of Kiba's collar and pulled him close again. The threatening jaws of Akamaru aimed at Sasuke's attacking arm forced the Uchiha prodigy to disconnect and let the distance between them gain. "Step away from her!" Kiba demanded as Akamaru's hair bristled with fury in equal measure. Ino was conscious, but she could barely move with all her restraints, and the way she was oriented when Kiba interrupted Sasuke left Ino facing the wall, unable to do anything but listen to their angry interaction. "You're misunderstanding," Hinata pled. "We found Ino like that. Help us untie her." "Oh, well, that's a good thing," Kiba sighed with relief as Akamaru's guard dropped and the two attempted to approach Ino, stopped only by Neji's hand on Kiba's shoulder yet again. "Aren't you forgetting that she conspired with them?" Neji asked. "And didn't you tell us the Hokage arrested her?" Realization reflected from Kiba's eyes and he nodded. "You're right. Well, once the hunt is on, my reason turns off. Sorry. I don't know why she's here, but the Hokage arrested her for a reason." Neji extrapolated, his Byakugan eye swiveling slowly from Sasuke to Hinata. "He probably didn't want her dad raising a stink that he arrested her," Sasuke figured, nodding to Hinata as she agreed with him. "The Fourth's allies are already so few." "Not as few as you think!" Kiba snapped again, his voice fluctuating between calm and feral in an instant. "It's clear the Hokage discovered your plot before you could act, and decided to finally round some of you up," Neji observed, his eyes swiveling back to the restrained Ino. "The only recourse here would be to follow through with the Lord Hokage's directive." "We don't have to," Hinata began, cut off by Sasuke. "No, we do," Sasuke said, standing and walking away from Ino to keep her out of harm's way. Naruto didn't want to include them because they're so set in their ways. "We'll need to use at least some force." "Kiba, I cannot attack the heir of my own clan," Neji told him. "So we must fight separately. Don't hurt Lady Hinata too badly, but do what is necessary." Kiba answered with incomprehensible growls as his feral aura seeped into and activated Akamaru's aggression. "I've got my eyes on the prey." Rain had begun to lightly fall, finally, and Shikamaru sighed against it all, shaking his head. This was the first time in months that it had rained. Shikamaru couldn't tell if that was a good thing or a bad thing. It was a dry season, so rain would doubtlessly be good for crops in the trees and the... Shaking his head of the distracting thoughts, Shikamaru knew that for him, for them, the rain was only bad news. His shadows were far more powerful in strong sunlight, after all. "I hoped we could just talk this one out," Shikamaru said as he and Choji turned, to see Sakura and Rock Lee standing in the middle of the roof. "If we were ever going to talk this out, you wouldn't have formed this opposition to us," Sakura told him, shrugging her shoulders as if this showdown was inevitable. "I still hope that we can talk," Rock Lee interjected, raising a gentle hand to slow Sakura's build-up. "Do you not think it is weird that the Hokage has not thrown any celebrations of our return? Of his own son's survival? Lord Hokage has to bear the weight of the entire village's stresses on his own shoulders," Choji defended. "I'm sure he is thankful for Naruto's safe return." "Naruto's on our team, you dunce," Sakura insulted, bewildered that they could not see reason. "Has it ever occurred to you that he told us how cold the Hokage's been since returning? To his own son? And he's the Hokage. He's been shouldering the load for years alone already. If you're suggesting he's snapped, then even more reason to step in." "I've been in the village for the whole time you lot have been away," Shikamaru reasoned, noting clenched fists from Choji. "If ever there was something so corrupt about the Hokage, are you saying that myself and all the other ninja have been blind to it? Over 3 years, do you not think the Hokage could have changed little by little? Lee asked. Perhaps you have normalized his transformation, slowly built your own wall of denial. You have been indoctrinated and you cannot even see it, nor would you. If he is so evil then, what would his goal be? Shikamaru asked with a tilted head, perturbed by Lee's assertions. Who knows? Sakura asked with another shrug, her eyes laser-focused on Shikamaru. Maybe he hasn't even executed it yet. Best time to stop him, Lee pointed out, before he does anything irreparable. As Jonin, it is my charge to protect the village, and by extension the Hokage, Shikamaru told them, grimacing. If you are truly set in your ways, then you're going to have to go through me. And me, Choji added, stepping ahead of Shikamaru. The rain only fell harder and harder. It had reached a point that they had to shout just to hear each other. The rain fell so thick that Shikamaru felt that he could barely recognize them at this distance. But no amount of rain would dissuade either side. Sakura, Lee muttered, I do not wish to fight anyone. Shikamaru has clearly declared his stance, Sakura answered. And if we try to go through him, Choji will intervene. We don't have a choice, Lee. If we start fighting atop the Hokage building, we will draw attention of innocent bystanders, Lee pointed out. If anyone gets hurt, it will have invalidated our cause. Then just incapacitate them, Sakura told him. Even if we find the Hokage, we'll still have to go through them. Best to do it now when they're still separated. Having second thoughts? Choji asked them, cracking his knuckles in anticipation. Are you actually excited for this? Shikamaru asked, dumbstruck by Choji's conviction. I'm not looking forward to fighting classmates and friends. It's necessary, Choji answered coldly. Sometimes the end justifies the means. Like you said, we must step up to protect our village. Taking several more steps forward, Choji shouts at them. How could you even think this was the right choice? Appearing in front of him, Lee raised a hand to stop him. Reaching for the raised hand to slap it out of the way, Choji found Lee's lightning reflexes twist around his slap and grip him by the wrist. It would not do well to approach with raised fist, Lee told him calmly. Fingers separating against his will, Lee could only move his eyes as he looked at Shikamaru beyond. Hands off, Choji, he said, holding a firm grip of his shadow possession jutsu. Apologies ahead of time, Lee, Sakura shouted, formulating a jutsu to interrupt Shikamaru's. Running past to stuck Lee, Choji met Sakura in close range, enlarging his hand and closing it around both of hers. Looking down grimly at the stark shadows of Shikamaru's jutsu, Lee sighed. So it has begun. Naruto was not expecting the rainfall. From atop the cliffs overlooking the village, he looked down at the Hokage building. He could see the little dots that were Sakura and Lee on the roof of the building. Furthermore, he sensed Sasuke and Hinata within the building itself, stopping opposite Neji and someone else. At his distance versus their proximity to one another, Naruto couldn't quite figure out who was all there. Most dangerously, he still couldn't sense the Hokage anywhere. Perhaps least dangerously, he figured, he could sense another approach nearby. Turning, Naruto found Shino emerge from nearby bushes nonchalantly. Both regarded one another silently and took no definitive action against the other. Walking to the edge beside Naruto, perhaps a few arm lengths away, Shino mirrored Naruto's stance and looked down at the building tension below. Shino muttered, recognizing the participants atop the building's roof and concluding the missing remainder must be indoors somewhere. So you haven't found Lord Fourth. We still need to clear the road first, Naruto answered, raising his eyes to meet Shino's for a moment. I've fought a Jinchuriki before, Shino raised an eyebrow. and I lived beside a bijou in some of my time away. Naruto huffed out a quick chuckle. Shino did not stand a chance against him, and Naruto wondered what his game plan was confronting him alone. I thought you would have recruited Tenten, Naruto observed, noting her absence. Tenten can think for herself, Shino answered, returning his eyes to the groups talking down below as the rain between began to heavily obscure them. You really want to do this? Naruto asked in a whisper, his voice turning from calm to fierce. No, Shino replied, shaking his head. No, I really don't. I'd rather know why you've come to this conclusion. I suppose we have time for now, Naruto answered, noting the sudden clash of the group below, the clashing of their steel entirely muffled by the rain. For Naruto, the only concern was locating his father, or coming to the defense of his allies in a pinch. Otherwise, he was meant to serve only as the watchdog to the events unfolding, though it would have been nice for Ino to show up for this confrontation. Shino, Naruto started, pausing for just a second as the flood of his sensors splashed for just an instant before turning calm again. If your dad became a fundamentally different person overnight, surely you would know instantly, Naruto asked, allowing his sensory technique to flow freely in search of the splash that vanished as quickly as it had appeared. I may have been gone from the village for years, but it may as well have been a single night's difference for my father's transformation, from what he was to what he is now. You were gone just as long. How have you failed to notice the distinct difference? Regrettably, Shino answered, I never had an even close relationship with your father. I'd hope that the weary would at least remain so when his own son doesn't even recognize him anymore, Naruto continued, huffing in barely restrained frustration. Even my own friends, people who have vouched to be on my side, still stand in my way. I don't want to be Hokage. I'm not trying to get rid of him so I can be in charge. Brow furrowing at Naruto's frustration, Shino wondered, Naruto, what is your goal then? My goal? Naruto asked, turning to Shino fully. In his own head, unable to voice the words, Naruto thought to himself, I just want my dad back. Landing atop the flooded ground before them, Minato Namikaze stood, cold contempt across his face. It seems the time has finally come that I have to discipline my son. And that's the end of today's episode. Rather than at the top of the episode, I decided to advertise over here. Remember to subscribe, like, comment, and share the video, as well as join the Discord for some of our meatier discussions. I tried to touch quickly on everyone and where they are for what's bound to be an exciting few episodes to follow. The stage is set for all our characters, with just Tenten missing still from the mix. As I said before, today was a quick one, but through my planning I discovered that it'll probably end up being closer to a 5 to 6 episode length for this climactic conclusion to the arc. And if I took the setup and squished it all together here and now, I wouldn't have to spend time on that later and just dive straight into the fun bits. Hopefully I can wrap all of this up before Christmas. This kind of setup might even encourage some RP in my Discord, which hasn't been seen since I did the Chunin exams. Who was that who knocked at Minato's door? Is Tenten going to take part? Are these team fights in the works, or are they going to pair off? I tried to capture that they're not all just raring to beat each other up. Some want answers, some would rather evade the ordeal altogether, some just want to solve the mystery, etc. I think that's far more realistic than just smashing each other's faces. Is Minato entirely compromised, or is he still the kind soul we all love? I hope you look forward to some of these impending matchups. Some are a long time coming, while others are certainly unique encounters that no one ever thinks about. Hinata versus Kiba? What's that gonna be? Without further ado, let's do the finishing riddle. 12 comrades, once bound as one, now torn apart as battles begun. Divided in strength, yet noble in heart, each side believes they play the vital part. No villain here, no darkness true, just different visions that split them in two. They fight for their nation, the future they see. But what fate will emerge from this fierce unity? Can peace be restored before blood is shed, or will some fall, the dream turning red? As the clash unfolds, a new path might form, yet the outcome remains in a brewing storm. Thank you so much for tuning in for 82 episodes strong. The sky's the limit.